And Somaliland turns to an innovative tool to deal with desert locust invasion. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, South Africa lays out aviation guidelines for coronavirus infection control. And in sports, Uganda suspends all football activity in the wake of CAF postponements. Well, we have our reporters on the ground to bring you the latest at this hour in Cairo, in Egypt. Adel El Marouhi is keeping an eye on developments there as the country effects a ban on international flights. And in London, our reporter Ollie Barrett has the latest as Germany institutes economic measures to stay afloat. Africa Live begins now. In Africa, 34 countries have reported over 640 cases of the coronavirus. Tanzania has just reported 2 more confirmed cases, one in Zanzibar and one in Dar es Salaam. Let's now take a look at the numbers by region. Northern Africa has the highest number of confirmed cases with 5 new infections in Morocco. Authorities have called on citizens to restrict their movements. Egypt still leads the continent with 210 cases. In Western Africa, Senegal has the highest number of infections after the Health Ministry reported 9 new cases. Religious leaders in the Muslim-majority nation are now advising against praying in mosques in a bid to contain the virus. In Eastern Africa, Rwanda has halted all commercial passenger flights for the next 30 days, including the national carrier Rwandair. This comes after 3 more cases were confirmed in the country. Central Africa maintains the lowest total number of infections. Equatorial Guinea has this week cancelled all international flights and closed all borders except for cargo. Meanwhile, in Southern Africa, Mauritius has just confirmed its first 3 cases of COVID-19. That was on Wednesday evening. 2 of the infected people were on a cruise ship, and the third one returned from the UK. The Prime Minister has stated that all passengers, regardless of nationality, will be prohibited from entering Mauritian territory for the next 14 days. Overall, the World Health Organization is reporting 15 deaths and 48 recoveries on the continent. Well, now to the latest figures on the coronavirus pandemic. For the first time, China has reported no new cases besides imported ones. Globally, data from Johns Hopkins University show more than 218,000 people have been infected. Italy has the largest outbreak in Europe, confirming over 4,200 new cases on Wednesday. It's followed by Spain, which has reported more than 14,000 infections. Iran, the worst hit country in the Middle East, has reported over 17,000 infections. The United States has seen over 2,000 new cases, taking the total to 9,000. South Korea has more than 8,500 cases, with the death toll nearing 100. In China, all 34 new cases were imported. Hubei province, where the outbreak began, is reporting no suspected cases. 85% of patients in China have recovered. Meanwhile, Zambia's Health Minister Chitalu Chilufya has confirmed the country's first 2 cases. The cases involve a couple that travelled to France with their 2 children for 10 days. The couple returned to Zambia on March the 15th and were immediately placed under self-quarantine. The man later on developed fever and flu symptoms. Laboratory results have confirmed that the couple has indeed tested positive for COVID-19. They have since been isolated in a designated facility near to Lusaka. The couple's 2 children are currently on self-quarantine as well. The health minister is urging residents not to panic. He's also urging the public to adhere to preventive measures by observing strict hygiene and avoiding unnecessary travel and public gatherings. Well, meanwhile, South Africa's Chief Justice Mogoeng says shutting down the courts as an intervention to deal with the coronavirus would be short-sighted, at least for now. The Chief Justice says careful consideration has been taken to ensure that justice is done as the country grapples with the new virus. CGTN's Yolissa and Jamela has more.
It's a race, as all different industries and sectors are aiming to ensure that all is in control when it comes to the coronavirus outbreak. The judiciary in South Africa is no different. They want to ensure that all is sorted and no one in their sector will be adversely affected. South Africa's Chief Justice Mogoeng has revealed that court cases will continue to be heard, but with a far-ranging set of sterilization.
Decontamination of reception and admission areas, community service centers, courtrooms, cells and detention facilities, offices, lifts, vehicles, biometrics, and ablution facilities, and all other objects that are generally touched by persons utilizing the facilities, including handles and taps. Floor and work surfaces of courtrooms and the premises as well as workplace, with special focus on maintenance and domestic violence, children's court, be disinfected with disinfectant material periodically, at least twice a day during working hours.
The Chief Justice further asserted that the decision to keep the courts operational could possibly be re-evaluated if the spread of the virus in the country worsens. That all communication previously sent out by other courts would be null and void with immediate effect.
I think we're facing a challenge that all of us would do well to do everything within our power to confront, with the capacities that we know are bound to contribute towards the attainment of that objective of securing a safe South Africa that is normalized again and permits of free movement and productivity in all walks of life.
The Chief Justice also emphasized that the courts may need to be shut down if millions of South Africans became infected. The courts are a hotbed of activity, and hearings often attract big groups in small rooms, and so these measures are meant to avoid such close human contact. Yolissa Njomela for CGTN in Midrand, South Africa.
The Tunisian president has imposed a nationwide curfew from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. from March the 18th. Meanwhile, the number of confirmed coronavirus cases in Tunisia has risen to 29.
The head of state said that the new measures are necessary in order to restrict the movement of people and limit public gatherings, which could spread the virus.
I took this decision after consulting with experts and all stakeholders. All citizens must comply with the curfew. The efficient and real solution for this problem is in the hands of Tunisians. Increasing awareness will help us face this global health threat.
Qais Said also met with the National Defense Minister and the Director General of Military Health. The meeting focused on the latest developments of the sanitary situation and measures to be taken to halt the proliferation of COVID-19.
I informed the Supreme Head of the Armed Forces of the operational readiness of the military institutions to support the efforts of the civil authorities and the state in general. The role of the civil society and the media is crucial in raising awareness among the citizens about the need to respect the measures.
The director of the National Observatory of New and Emerging Diseases announced that there are 2 local cases and 3 imported ones among the 5 new confirmed infections.
The number of cases contaminated by coronavirus in Tunisia has risen to 29. Out of 66 tests carried out on March 17th, 5 cases tested positive. Their health state is stable. The 5 persons have been taken care of and placed in quarantine.
Some 7,479 people have been placed in self-isolation. 2,998 of them have completed the self-isolation period and 4,481 are still quarantined. The Tunisian government, the parliament, as well as the COVID-19 crisis unit have commended the decision of the President of the Republic to declare a curfew from 6 p.m. Experts at the Ministry of Health said this decision will help limit the spread of the virus. Aden Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
The International Labour Organization has said the effects of COVID-19 will be far-reaching, possibly rendering almost 25 million jobless across the world. The head of the ILO is calling for urgent measures to protect workers and stimulate the economy, as was the case in 2008 to 2009 during the global financial crisis.
Well, the figures the ILO's put out today are that in 2020, this pandemic could cost us, on different growth assumptions, between 5.3 million jobs in the best case scenario, up to nearly 25 million jobs in the worst case. And just put that in perspective, in the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, we lost 22 million jobs. So you see, potentially at least, we're in the same territory as we were back then. I think the real thing we have to all keep in mind is there's nothing inevitable about all of this. So much depends on our capacity to put in place the right policy responses. And then, and finally, in situations when labour markets and economies are under such pressure, we need the right fiscal, the right monetary policies. And we're seeing many governments actually applying, and in quite big quantities, the right types of fiscal stimulus. But what I think we need to look to now is a type of global coordination, the international common purpose that was so evident in 2008, 2009, indeed with the creation of the G20. And through the G20 in those very difficult times, we actually made sure that the worst did not happen. We did not have a 1930s scenario. And I think that lesson has to be applied in our current circumstances. We have some very dark prospects ahead of us, but it's not inevitable, and a great deal depends on our capacity, our common purpose, to make sure that the worst scenario does not materialise.
Well, to protect economies and citizens, many countries are putting in place stimulus packages and financial support programmes. Let's get you some more details on this from our reporters on the ground. We have Adel El Marouki, who is joining us live from Cairo. Phil Ihaza is in Abuja, and Ollie Barrett is in London for us. Thank you. Now let's start with you, Ollie, in London. Germany is considering measures to stay afloat. What are the details of this, and what are others like the UK planning?
Well, German Chancellor Angela Merkel is saying that she and her government will do whatever it takes to support the German economy. Some German banks are predicting that the German economy could take a hit in terms of its GDP of as much as 5% as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. She and her government are therefore considering a raft of measures that go sector by sector, really, in terms of the most affected industries that are going to need assistance. And we've seen a similar story across Europe as well. But we've also seen action announced by the central bank, the European Central Bank, with Christine Lagarde, the chief of the ECB, announcing a package to buy up company and government debt worth around $820 billion. So a vast package coming from the ECB, and some important words as well from Christine Lagarde, saying there are no limits to the ECB's commitment to the euro single currency. We've heard similar words from other European leaders here in the UK. The government is also saying they will do whatever it takes to support the economy. The UK government's announced a package of loans and guarantees worth around $400 billion. That is around 15% of UK GDP. They are also promising help sector by sector. Business rates are being completely paused, for example, for businesses in retail, hospitality, leisure, the pubs, the bars, the restaurants, the cafes that have very few, if not none, no customers at all at the moment. So a vast range of measures being considered across the European continent now.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ollie. That was Ollie in London. We'll return to Ollie in a moment. Now over to Adel in Egypt. The international flight travel ban is starting today. How is the government planning to cushion the people from the economic shocks there?
Well, similar measures have been taken, like we've just heard in Germany, but different numbers. For example, Egypt is putting aside some $6.3 billion as a backup to cover for the losses expected and to support the economy for the impact that COVID-19 has on the country. There is about 10% of that, the $630 million will be put in debt relief, a measure that will affect about 940,000 Egyptian borrowers domestically, and therefore is expected to provide huge relief. There are still negotiations about whether that debt relief will be extended to microloans or not. We're still waiting for the government, but expecting similar approach. The stock market has been plummeting non-stop for a week. It's now down by more than 34% since the year began. There is tax cuts imposed on capital gain, on dividends, and on transaction for the stock market. All public enlisted companies or public traded companies will be given extension in the deadline to file their taxes and to submit their Q1 financial reports. The measures extend to go beyond the trade. For example, the Ministry of Trade is waiving requirements from embassies, guarantee certificates that is necessary for custom clearances. That will be waived so that as not to ban or slow the flow of trades in and out of the country.
Okay, thank you very much, Adel. Let's now go to you, Phil, who's in Abuja in Nigeria. Nigeria has already been hit by oil price reductions. Now there's the economic impact of COVID-19 on top. What is the plan to protect the economy and citizens there?
Well, thank you, Karen. There's been several meetings with between the government and, of course, the economic team. There was just one concluded on Wednesday, which was chaired by the president himself, Muhammadu Buhari. But interventions are coming in from the Apex Bank, the Central Bank of Nigeria. The Central Bank of Nigeria is planning to intervene with over $1 trillion, that's about $2.7 billion, into several critical sectors, critical sectors like the manufacturing sector, the health sector, agriculture, and all of that, to ensure that production is boosted during this period to so that the prices of things are not so affected, because Nigeria depends so a lot on imported goods. Also, the Central Bank of Nigeria has said it will cut interest rates of its intervention facilities to from 9% to 5%, so that the pressure on the beneficiaries of those facilities would not be so much in the next 1 year. It has also promised to intervene with about 50 billion naira, that's about $134 million, to small-scale medium enterprises, and double of that, that's about 100 billion naira, which is $270 million to health authorities. The reason is for the fact that the country is faced with this kind of economic crunch at this period, so health authorities will definitely need more funds to do research, to purchase supplies, health supplies, and all of that. So that fund will be directed to the health sector. So indeed, the central bank, through the government, of course, is doing a lot to ensure that the economy of Nigeria doesn't feel the impact of both the fall in oil prices and, of course, the coronavirus outbreak in the country.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Back to you, Ollie, in London. Most affected countries have seen panic buying, as we know, and subsequent shortages. Italy and Spain have the highest coronavirus numbers in Europe. How are the people coping with such shortages?
Well, it's difficult, particularly for the vulnerable and the elderly, to get to supermarkets some of the time, particularly for people who are under self-isolation. So many people are having to have friends make deliveries. And then when people do find themselves able to get to supermarkets, they often are finding that products like loo roll, like pasta, like tinned goods are often in very short supply. Now, here in the UK, the supermarkets are saying we have enough supplies. People do not need to panic buy, but the panic buying has continued in places, and that's partly because here in London, for example, people are worried that a wider lockdown might be coming, that they might be confined to their homes for longer periods, that shopping is going to get even harder. So they are queuing for as many goods as they can get their hands on. But some supermarkets are taking steps. Sainsbury's, for example, here in Britain is rationing the amount of grocery products that each person can buy. They're also having special times of day when older people and the most vulnerable can shop in the supermarkets alone with other customers not around. So supermarkets are insisting their supply chains are in good shape, but for those people who can't get their hands on goods when they need them, that's very difficult indeed, and they're often having to join very long queues at some retail establishments to find the products that they need.
Okay, thank you very much, Ollie. Back to you, Adele. Egypt is the worst hit in Africa. What's the impact on ordinary food markets and supermarkets there?
Well, there has been a series of panic buying taking place in supermarkets and in public markets, and as well as in pharmaceutical or from pharmacies. We've seen prices of items like face masks, like ethyl alcohol and other disinfectants are rising fivefold just within 1 week. And a similar approach has been happening from the government, from even stores, who say that they have a lot of inventory and there's really no need for that panic buying to go on. The government has been also urging people to manage their buying habits and be ensured that there is national reserve that will cover the country for months to come. Meanwhile, just about less than an hour ago, the Egyptian Prime Ministry has released a statement posing a curfew on commercial markets and stores and supermarkets as well. From 7 p.m. until 6 a.m. in the morning, no customers will be allowed to stay in shopping malls or in shops, but delivery options, food delivery specifically, will be open. Supermarkets and pharmacies are exempted from this new rule. It's one of the government's latest approaches to decrease the flow of people in such places. There have been, of course, hours of waiting in supermarket lines like most places in the world have also seen. So the government doesn't want to see this happening because this increases the exposure of people with other strangers and therefore the risk of contamination or contagious increases with that risk as well. So the government is trying to avoid that.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele. Now back to you, Phil, in Abuja in Nigeria. Nigeria has a huge population. What is the impact on ordinary people going about their ordinary business and shopping?
Well, thank you, Karen. Indeed, the impact on ordinary people is already beginning to show with the latest report released by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. It was released for the inflation rate of Nigeria in February. That showed that the inflation rate is at record highs. It increased 0.07 more than in January. Economic experts say January inflation rate was expected as a result of the fact that the country was just coming out from a festive period. But February has to be explained with the fact that there's increase in prices of consumer goods. Nigeria depends majorly on imported goods from several parts. Imported goods from China and other parts of the world. So definitely with restrictions, travel restrictions to several countries, there's definitely going to be shortage of goods or supply to the country. We're seeing cases where business people are beginning to hoard what they have in store.
Okay, terribly sorry we lost Phil Ahaza there. Well, earlier we spoke to our reporters Adel El Mahrouhi, who joined us from Cairo, and of course also Ollie Barrett in London. We thank all of those three.
We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
A new disease spreading quickly around the world with no respect for borders.
This is not a drill.
But is Africa prepared? And is the public well informed?
As journalists, we have to separate fact from fiction.
CGTN takes an in-depth look into Africa's readiness and population awareness as the coronavirus outbreak continues to unfold.
What safety measures are in place at Africa's international airports?
And what habits can we adopt in the home to keep us safe out in the world?
We take you on a journey through Africa's efforts to understand, isolate and battle COVID-19. Only on CGTN.
The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has held a video conference with Chinese health experts. The digital meeting aims to educate Africa's CDC members on how they can control the situation across the continent. CGTN's Daniela Pearson tells us more.
Health experts from the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the Africa CDC, gathered at African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Over a Skype meeting, they listened to their Chinese colleagues who spoke about their experiences in trying to curb the spread of COVID-19.
As of today, Wednesday the 18th of March, we have 31 African countries out of the 55 member states that are reporting confirmed cases of COVID-19. And we have slightly over 500 cases in these 31 countries. So I would say that the outbreak in Africa has started, and more countries are getting affected.
The Chinese health experts shared knowledge with their African colleagues on various issues, such as how to trace close contacts at the peak of the outbreak.
From the very beginning of the outbreak, before Africa even received its first case, we were learning what was going on in China. We were exchanging information about how China is responding in China, and we were also preparing ourselves based on the experience in China. We are working with all the 55 member states to get their capacity to be able to diagnose the virus. Secondly, to enhance surveillance at their ports of entry, because we expect that the first case in a country will be imported from outside. And thirdly, to strengthen the ability of the health system to be able to manage the first cases, and therefore not let it spread within the country.
The African health experts also commended China's efforts in fighting COVID-19. The Africa CDC members say the remarkable results yielded by China are of great importance to Africa.
The experience that China has undergone is very important for us, because ours is just starting, while in China is just ending. I think today's meeting by video conference is a good example of that, where the Chinese government has placed its experience on the table for African countries to be able to see and use as an example for countries to be better prepared.
Through the Africa CDC, China has also provided multifaceted material assistance, including reagent testing kits. China has also provided emergency relief to African countries affected by the outbreak. Chinese medical teams in African countries are also actively participating in anti-epidemic operations. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Now, a slight change of gear. We're bringing you a song produced by 3 African students in China. The song, played on MTV, was created by a Ghanaian singer, a Gabonese rapper, and a Nigerian rapper.
In the past 2 weeks, the number of cases of COVID-19 outside China has increased 13-fold, and the number of affected countries has tripled.
Be cautious when you go out there. Never think you are immune. Be cautious when you go out there. Let's stand together to fight a virus.
Arrêtons nos conneries, l'heure est grave, c'est pas de la comédie. Corona est dangereux, donc soyons un peu plus sérieux. 3 ans sur 2 points sur toi, du savon te wash les mains. Reste en case, évite ton peuple et sauve des vies. Et sauve des vies.
Only share verified info. You may put us in a state of a limbo. Caution is the weapon. Be courageous and carry on.
Well, efforts are ongoing in Somalia to control the Locust invasion. The semi-autonomous region of Somaliland is spraying biopesticide and increasing surveillance efforts using an innovative tool called Locust 3. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has that story.
Somaliland is trying to contain the formation of new swarms of desert locusts. Control operations were recently carried out on the outskirts of Garissa town. The breeding grounds have been sprayed with pesticides.
We prefer to use this pesticide, biopesticide, for safety to the animal. We have many of livestock in Somaliland, this is for in Somaliland, and also this biopesticide safety for the friendly for the environment. And also the safety for the people in the area or the community people, and also for the staff that spray this biopesticide.
Now, a new innovative tool called the Locust 3 is set to enhance surveillance. Locust 3 technology gathers data transmitted via satellite to the Food and Agriculture Organization. It then gives updated information about the current situation in the field in real time.
When you send it, the report by it's sent directly and on time when you are conduct control or survey. Up to the Roma, it's sent, and also to the region. The Locust office in the region. So it is very important, and also it have many of the information inside of it for about the desert locust.
The desert locust is considered to be the most destructive pest in the world. A swarm covering 1 square kilometer contains 40 million locusts that can eat the same amount of food in one day as 35,000 people. The Food and Agriculture Organization says the situation is extremely alarming in East Africa, a region where 20 million people are already considered to be food insecure. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
We've got all the business news coming up for you, including South Africa lays out aviation guidelines for coronavirus infection control. And the Africa Free Trade Area Agreement faces imminent delay as some member states close their borders. South Africa's Civil Aviation Authority has issued guidelines for infection control for all airlines in respect of passenger, cargo and baggage handling. These are guided by the general guidelines issued by the World Health Organization. The aviation regulator is doing this to mitigate the risk of the COVID-19 pandemic. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela reports now from Johannesburg.
South Africa is putting in stringent measures to avoid the spread of the coronavirus. Air transportation is one of the industries mostly affected by the disease. OR Tambo International Airport is one of the busiest airports in South Africa. To curb the spread of the coronavirus, the bulk of the staff here are required to wear gloves and masks. Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula says preventative measures and random screenings are being conducted for the safety of all, not just South African citizens.
It is very important to note that the biggest denominator on us implementing quarantine will be based on travel history, not nationality. This process also deals with stigma issues that should be eliminated from this process. This is time for solidarity, not stigmatization.
Passengers traveling to South Africa from high-risk countries are being redirected to a remote parking and screened. Even travelers from high-risk countries passing through South Africa en route to neighboring countries are being impacted.
There is a ship that docked in Cape Town last night full of German people, and they wanted to disembark, get into Lufthansa, back to Germany. It's not allowed. So our regulations that are operational at the present moment will not allow that. So there will be no disembarkation and embarkation. Only goods will be allowed in those particular areas, ports of entry.
South Africa's government wants to ensure that while the country deals with the spread of the coronavirus and closing many ports of entry, visitors to this country do not feel like they're unfairly targeted.
Our aim here is to stop the spread of disease, not to annihilate human beings. Yes, we still need to eat. You still need medication. Yeah, some bit of movement is still needed. All we are doing is to slow the progress of a disease.
The Transport and Home Affairs Ministries will continuously update the citizens on the latest.
The South African citizens have been advised to refrain from traveling at this time, but that those who have to travel should take precaution to protect themselves. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A free market agreement to open African borders to more intercontinental trade was set to kick off in July, but economists have warned that the coronavirus might scupper those plans, as CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports now from Accra.
Ghana was to play host to the launch of Africa's free trade deal, insisting it's still going ahead despite concerns over how quickly COVID-19 might spread across Africa. President Nana Akufo-Addo has assured that an office complex that will host the Free Trade Deal Secretariat has been kitted out for launch. The African Continental Free Trade Area is expected to boost trade for 1.2 billion people. But with the coronavirus pandemic now hitting Africa, some economists say trade could slow down.
While the people are unable to cross borders to trade, and every country is quite scared of opening its borders for people to cross, then obviously, unless this issue is resolved within the shortest possible time, where there is nothing like if I move from Ghana to Ivory Coast or to Togo, and it's unlikely for me to be affected with this coronavirus.
Ghana's government has tightened travel restrictions to countries hard hit by the COVID-19. It has also strengthened surveillance and screening at its land borders and ports. In the midst of all these measures, the government says it's confident of setting up the Secretariat of the Continental Free Trade Area by the end of this month. For now, though, it is not clear whether the Continental Free Trade Area would begin in July if the coronavirus pandemic is not effectively tackled in Africa. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Nigeria's government will suspend earlier plans to borrowing nearly $23 billion, most of it from external sources. The government says its decision is in line with the country's current economic realities. With Brent crude having fallen by over 50% since the start of the year, Nigeria is facing a significant cut in revenue from oil and gas sales. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam with the details.
Unprecedented turn of events as the coronavirus pandemic unsettles global economies, including Nigeria. Disruptions in the supply chains, dip in crude oil prices, and crash in financial markets all point to a looming global recession. This reality has led the Nigerian government to defer its initial external borrowing plans of $22.7 billion.
What is the rate of borrowing and the impact on the economy? So we had borrowed at 15% rate. That's when you average all the debt we have collected in the last 5 years. But the economy has only grown by 2.1%, which means most of the money Nigeria had borrowed in the last 5 years did not have significant impact on the economy.
Nigeria depends on crude oil for over 80% of its export earnings. But at its current average $30 per barrel, oil prices plunged beyond the benchmark of $57 per barrel, an all-time low since 2016. Nigeria slid into recession in 2016 and spent its way out of it. Government would now require alternative sources of revenue.
My first advice for government is structural adjustment. The money that should be meant for subsidy, government should use it now to provide a soft landing, cushion effect in case global oil prices go back again. What government should do is also to block leakages. Leakages that we have from federal, state and local government could be used to spend our way out of recession.
If government eventually changes its mind, it would raise Nigeria's debt profile from $66.8 billion to $89.5 billion. In the meantime, government would be looking to intensify diversification efforts as it continues to monitor all economic indices. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
The US Senate has passed legislation providing more than $100 billion to confront the coronavirus. The measures will include support for free testing for the virus, paid sick leave, additional food aid and other urgently needed steps. Senate leaders said that they will also work on legislation aimed at aiding small businesses, giving Americans money directly and helping some sectors during the crisis. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump said that he will invoke the Defense Production Act. The move will allow the US government to accelerate production of much-needed equipment. Trump also said that a hospital ship will be sent to New York and that a second would be deployed to the West Coast. Meanwhile, the New York Stock Exchange will halt activity on its trading floor as of Friday night. It comes after the coronavirus outbreak has heavily shaken markets in recent weeks. John Terrett has more from New York.
Two headlines from the New York Stock Exchange at the end of the Wednesday session. Headline number one, the exchange will close its trading floor as of Friday night. There will be only electronic trading at the New York Stock Exchange starting next Monday for the foreseeable future. And the other headline, all the points associated with President Trump since he came to office and was inaugurated in January of 2017, all those points on the Dow Jones have gone. They've all been wiped out. The difference is a mere 166 points. There was a strong rally into the end of the Wednesday session, but it couldn't save President Trump's humiliation. The story of the day is that the market opened down around 1,300 points. There was yet another stop down midway through the day because the selling was so intense. A man called Bill Ackerman, who heads up a company called Pershing Square, a very famous investor, called on the president to give everybody in the United States a 30-day tax-free holiday. A spring break, he called it, because he said all hell is about to break out. Challenger, Gray and Christmas, a career advisory company based in Chicago, saying that the layoffs we've seen in America so far are the tip of the iceberg. Crude fell to a record low on Wednesday. Gold was lower. Bond yields are up. There appears to be a flight to cash. The dollar has been soaring. Among the biggest losers on the Wednesday session, Boeing, United Health and Home Depot. Boeing seeking a $60 billion bailout. Its shares are down 18% on Wednesday, at one point trading as low as $92. Just a few weeks ago, it was worth $330. And American Airlines hitting an all-time low, down around 25% at $11.65. There was some green on the board. Walmart, the world's biggest shop, managed to be the only Dow stock to reach an all-time high in the last month. That's because it can sell cheap food and lots of it to people who need it, and it has a very strong online presence. And BioAmerica, a biotech company in California, shares up 340% on Wednesday. The reason why? It's got a new quick rapid test for COVID-19, and the stock market liked the sound of that. The headline once again, stock market in New York closes as of Friday night. John Terrett, CGTN, on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
We've got all the sports headlines coming up for you. Uganda suspends all football activity in the wake of CAF postponements.